Well, what we're going to be doing is giving this Mariner 20 horsepower a full service. The engine is a 2015. I'm changing everything on it. I'm doing the impeller, the spark plugs, fuel filter, engine oil, gearbox oil. I'm changing all of it. So this is like your yearly service. So everything's being changed on it. It's going to be a how-to video. I will also show you all the tools required. So yeah, let's get on with it. Down at the bottom of the engine you can see I've got a hose pipe which is attached to the muffs. This is so I can run the engine and warm it up a little. I don't want to try and drain the oil freezing cold, so I'm going to warm it up for 5-10 minutes. Once it's warmed up, I'm going to pull the boat back into the garage a little bit further and then we'll get on with the service. Well, right here is all the components for the service. We've got 10W30 engine oil. It says on there it's Quicksilver oil, 4-stroke marine engine oil, SAE 10W30. We've then got gear lube right here, which is 8W90. We've got a brand new oil filter, all genuine parts, NGK spark plugs. The code on these is DCPR6E. And then we've also got a Quicksilver impeller, fuel filter, and we've got a couple of little washers here for the gearbox screws where you drain the oil from. So that's everything there for the service. Coming across, this is all the tools that are required. So I'll go through this as we do the service, but this just gives you an idea. I've got some sockets, some extension bars, oil filter tool. This is an impact screwdriver to get the gearbox oil screws out, some long nose pliers and just a few spanners. But all these sizes will be in the description and I'll show you as we go through the video. What I've got at the bottom of the engine, it's a bit like a gorilla bucket, like a horse feed bucket, just a small one. Because what's going to happen, the oil is going to shoot out first to about here, and then it's going to start running down the engine into the bucket. So you want a tub underneath and you want to have a little tub to hand right here. Right, we're going to undo this nut here now to drain the engine oil. It's a 16mm socket, just like that. Now it's hand tight, so we can undo this by hand. And there you go, as you can see, that's the oil coming out there. Once the main gush of the oil is gone, it's going to start running down the engine and you can't catch it all. As you can see there, we'll leave it now drain into the bucket at the bottom. We'll leave that to drain for a while like that, and then we'll have to tip the engine up to get the last little bit of oil out. Well, as you can see, we've got a slow drip now, so I'm going to put the nut back in and then we're going to lift the engine up. The only reason I put the nut back in, when you lift the engine, the oil changes direction and it can make a mess of your floor. So shove the nut back in, finger tight, just like that, and now we'll tilt the engine back up. Well, as you can see, the engine's in the tilted up position. Lean it to the left hand side like we have here, take the nut back out and then slowly tilt the engine back to the right. Now I'm going to remove this nut. What you want to do here is keep your little tub handy and tip the engine over slowly. As you can see, the oil's coming out everywhere again. You tip it right over, just like that. And try and get out as much as you can. Now we'll lift the engine all the way up. We'll leave it to drip now and let the rest of the oil come out. Well, the engine oil's finished draining now, so I've put the nut back in, I've tightened it up. I will put the torque specs in the description. What we're doing now is going to drain the gearbox oil. If you have the engine in the centre position, over here, look, down the very bottom where you got your propeller, just below it, there's the drain nut for the gearbox oil. A little bit further up, you've got another one here, which is the fill level, which you'll see how it works in a moment. Undo the bottom nut first. The oil won't really drain. You then need to undo the top nut to release the airlock, and then the oil will start flying out the bottom. But I'll show you all this when we refill it. What I'm going to do is undo the bottom one now and show you the right way to do it. What we have here to remove the gearbox oil nut is an impact screwdriver. You'll get a lot of people using a normal screwdriver, and these can round off very easily. If you use an impact screwdriver like this, it obviously goes into the screw like that, and you give it a tap with the hammer and it'll give it a bit of impact and twist at the same time. so it'll release the nut without damaging the top of the head on the screw. On these you have right and you also have left. So I'm undoing this, it needs to go anti-clockwise, which is left. So you got to put it into the left position. And if you was tightening it, which I probably won't use this to tighten, but if you was, you got to put it into the right position. But we'll get this screw out now and show you how this tool works. So as you can see here, we've got the gearbox nut and we've got the impact screwdriver. So what you're going to do is put it into the screw in the centre of it and give it a good sharp tap. And as you've seen then, it turned. Now you see that's loose. With this tool, which I think was only about £8 off eBay, it makes it really, really easy. That screw's ready to come out now, it's finger tight. So we'll get this screw out now. You will get a little bit of oil coming out, so keep a tub handy, but you won't get a load of oil coming out because there's airlock in the gearbox, because we've still got the top screw in up the top. As you'll see, we might get a bit of oil coming out, look. This oil now, you want to have a good look at it. You want to make sure it's not creamy and there's no water in it. And this oil's pretty clean, it looks quite new actually. This engine I've not had long, so, but yeah, this oil is perfect. There's no water in it from what I can see at the moment, and it looks nice and clean. We're going to remove the top nut up here now and doing it exactly the same as we did just now with that impact screwdriver. And you'll see as we undo it, the oil will start coming out of here pretty fast. And that's the top one undone. Make sure your tub's handy because the oil will start to flow out of here pretty quick. It's starting to flow now, as you can see, and the nut's not even removed yet. It's out now. Now that's draining like that, we'll drop the engine back down into the upright position and let that oil drain out. As you can see, the oil's draining there now nicely. Just keep an eye on it and make sure there's no water in this oil, as it can rest on the top of the oil. So we'll leave it draining now and we'll go up top and we'll do the oil filter and spark plugs and stuff. Right, your spark plugs, you got one lead at the bottom here and you got one lead at the top there. So what I'm going to do is remove the leads so we can get access to the plugs. We'll have a look at the condition of this plug now. It don't look too bad, but we've got new ones which are going in. So, but as you can see with this socket, it holds the plug in place with the rubber inside it. It's quite a tight fit, so it stops it dropping out. And here is the new spark plug. Make sure the code on the spark plug is the same as the one that's came out, which it is. You got a little blue writing right there on it. So when you put this back in, make sure you don't cross thread it. Start it off carefully, like this. If it goes tight at any point, stop, because you are cross-threading it. This is going in nicely, look. So that's what you want. Do not cross-thread it, because it's going to cost you a lot of money if you do. That's now hand tight. What I generally do with spark plugs, once it's hand tight, give it about a quarter of a turn. That's a little tiny bit more than a quarter. Right there. And that spark plug is fitted. Now we'll replace the top one. Just below your bottom spark plug, you've got the fuel filter, which sits right down there. So what we're going to do is pull it up. It is a bit short, the rear pipe right there. You've got little wire clips on here, which you can just pinch with your fingers to open. And then slide the pipe off, just like that. And the same at the back. Hold the pipe and then twist and pull off the fuel filter. You want your other fuel filter to go on the same way as this one come off, which is that way, like that. We'll get the new one now and get it fit. Well, as you can see, I've had to do a voiceover. I lost the audio, some of it was crackly. Anyway, you need to fit this fuel filter the same way around, as you can see there, and put the clips on. Right here, we have the oil filter. I'm pointing to it, as you can see. What we need to do now is take that off. You can see I'm pointing down inside the cowl. What I'm saying there is to put a towel down there, just to catch any drips of oil that come out the filter. You do get quite a lot of oil coming out. I didn't actually catch it all, but I got most of it in the rag. This is an adjustable oil filter tool. It'll work on all different sizes of oil filters. So what you do is you get it on there. It's directional as well, but you put it on there, and as you turn it, it tightens, so then it starts to loosen the oil filter, as you'll see right now. There was actually an issue with this oil filter. It was too tight originally when I tried to undo it, and then it was tight all the way off. The thread is not damaged on the engine, but it shouldn't be this tight. After a full revolution, you should be able to take it off by hand, and I couldn't. I did really struggle with this oil filter, to be honest. Hopefully you don't have that same issue. But that's it now. Technically, you unscrew it, remove the filter like that, and that's it, job done. This is the new filter that I'm installing. Get a bit of clean oil and rub it around that seal there. If you don't, when it goes on dry, it can pinch it and break it. But if you put some oil around it, it'll be totally fine. Now, you want to screw this filter on. It shouldn't feel tight at any point at all. If it starts to feel tight, well, you can see there, look, that's threading really easily. That's what you're looking for. If it feels tight, stop, because you are cross-threading it. As you can see, I'm doing it with one finger there, look. So what I'm going to do now, I get it hand tight. As you'll see, I do put a bit of force on it. I get it as hand tight as I can, if that makes sense. And then I'll pinch it up just a little bit with an oil filter tool. But you can leave it hand tight as long as it's tight, if you know what I mean. Right there now, that probably is tight enough, but I like to give it a little turn. This is the gear linkage for the bottom of the gearbox. You need to undo that nut, those nuts there, that long one. I'm doing the impeller now. These are 8mm spanners, but you undo the locking nut, and then what you want to do is thread that little nut to the top and thread that long nut to the top as well. You have to undo this as part of taking the gearbox off. As you can see there, look, you screw it to the top and then you can pull the shafts apart. You can leave it like that. Now we go down to the bottom of the gearbox. As you can see here, you've got 4 bolts, 2 this side and 2 the other side, and it's a 17mm spanner. What you want to do is undo these nuts. You can leave them on a little towards the end of the thread, so when you're wiggling and pulling the gearbox, it don't actually just drop off or drop out on the floor. This gearbox was an absolute nightmare to get off. Obviously I didn't video all of it, but it was a lot of tapping, a lot of wiggling, and a lot of messing around to get off. It maybe took me 25-30 minutes to get it off, and generally they come off pretty easy. As you can see here, the bolts was very salted up and crappy. That's why I think I struggled. But you can see I've split the gearbox there. So what you want to do, as you'll see in the video now, is give it a good wiggle up and down and pull, and eventually it will come out. The cavitation plate as well, you don't want to hit it too hard because you will damage it. As you can see there, a bit of heavy force wiggling and pulling, and it's out. In the background there you can see my phone. I was doing a live video for YouTube at the time of doing this. I wanted to show everybody live what goes into making videos, so that's what you can see right there. Next, this is the impeller housing, that part right there. You have 3 bolts right around it. You got 2 at the front there and 1 at the back, which you can't see. What you want to do is undo those 3 bolts, and then this housing will come off. It's a 10mm this is. So you undo those, get them bolts out the way, pull them all out, and then carefully and slowly pry this housing up, just like this. The impeller stays inside the housing as you take it off. And be careful as well. I'll show you this bit now. You've got the impeller there in the housing, but on the shaft, look, you've got like a little wood rough key. Take that out. It's very likely this could fall out, and if it does, it can fall down inside those water jackets there, look, those 2 slots. So take it out and keep it super safe. You do not want to lose it, and you do not want it dropping down inside there. That's what I'm explaining there. What I've done, I've cleaned the gasket surfaces up. As you can see, it's nice and shiny silver now. So I'll give it all a good clean. Inside here now, I'm putting a little bit of grease. The reason why, for the first start up, it helps the impeller. It also helps the impeller reseat in there. You don't want a lot. It's literally just a fine little smear inside there. As you'll see now, there's not a lot of grease in there. It's just a very fine coating. That's all you need. What I've done, I've put the key back in, as you can see there, that Woodruff key. Grease it up a little bit, it helps it sort of stick into the shaft. If it's just dry, it keeps falling out. Put a bit of grease on here and it'll stick in there. And now we'll get the new impeller and we'll slide it down over that shaft, just like that. Line it up with a key and it'll slot in, and you'll see now that shaft's moving with the impeller. You want to make sure that it is. Also hold the shaft with your hand and try and turn the impeller. Make sure that impeller's locked. Now you slide the housing back down. What you want to do, rest the housing on top of the impeller and turn the shaft clockwise. I'm turning the shaft there and putting a little bit of downwards pressure on the impeller housing, and as you can see, it seats perfectly. It's nice and easy that way, and you don't damage the impeller or crinkle it up. And then I'll give it a few turns just to make sure it feels like it's seated well, which it is. And then you get your bolts back in. Do not put these bolts too tight. I am going to try and get hold of the torque specifications and put them down in the description for you all. But it's a plastic housing. If you crank these right up, you are going to break it, and it's going to be expensive. I'm guessing. I've never had to buy one. Fingers crossed, I never do. But yeah, don't go too tight. I did clean this shaft earlier, but I didn't show it before I put the new impeller on and the new housing on. But now, on the teeth at the top there, that's what goes back up into the engine. I'm going to put a bit of grease on it. I have got way too much grease on my finger there. You only want a small smear. I do wipe off the excess in a second. This just helps it reseat when you're pushing it back in. It'll also help with wear and stuff. As you can see, I've wiped the excess off and I spread it about a bit. You don't want too much on here because it will splatter everywhere inside the casing, inside the engine. Well, inside the leg, if you know what I mean. So just a fine smear just to help it slide back in. Also, on that black rubber there, you want to put grease on the inside of it there. Not a lot, just a little bit. This is for the water feed pipe, this is. So it just stops the rubber getting damaged and it'll slide back in nicely. So yeah, just a tiny bit of grease in there. And that's it now. What I'm doing, I'm pulling that shaft at the back up to put it into gear. And as you can see, that drive shaft's turning. You'll see why I do this now. Slide it back up carefully and you'll get to a point where it stops there, look. Turn your propeller. As you can see, it lines up the teeth up inside with the drive shaft and it slots in perfectly. It goes back in no problem. Otherwise you'll spend hours fighting with it. And that's it, all bolted back up. 4 bolts are on. You've got 2 bolts either side, 4 bolts, and don't forget your gear linkage. Attach that back up as well, and that's that job done. All finished. Now, engine oil. I've got the engine tilted up a little bit here, but it says to put in a litre of 10W30. Obviously, take your time with it and check your dipstick. This did take a full litre, so just take your time on that part when you do it yourself, and don't just chuck a litre straight in. What we'll do now is keep pumping this into the gearbox until it comes out the top hole. So I've had to cut a hole in the top of this just to get the pump in. These are not the best bottles. If you can, buy an actual tub of like a litre, because this will screw straight onto it. But yeah, we'll get it pumped in now and I'll show you up top what happens when it's full. The oil will start to come out of here once it's full, so just keep pumping it and eventually it will come out the top, just like that. What we'll do is slowly push it now, just to get a bit more of a dribble coming out. You want to make sure there's no air in there. We'll go a little bit more. Just pump it slowly. Just get rid of the air bubbles a little, just like this. And that will be fine like that. That'll be all done. So what I'll do, get this screw back in. The little fibre washer's there, it's a new one. So we get the top screw back in first, and don't cross thread it either. As you can see, that's going back in nicely there. So we'll get this tightened up, and we'll get in the bottom and get the bottom screw in, and that's it, all done. I didn't lose anything at the bottom. So what you do, once it comes out the top up here, put that back in, lift your engine up, take off the pump, and then put the screw back in, and that's it. That's the full service done. So what I'm going to do is get this engine warmed up, fire it up, warm up all the oils, make sure there's no leaks, And that'll be it, service complete. It's warmed up now, so turn that choke off. And there we go. Ticking over nice, pumping water nice, and that's what you want. It all looks good, it sounds good, it's all working fine. So, hopefully it won't be too long, we can get it out on the water, give it a proper test, and get some fish. If you can, give the video a like.